Thurgood Marshall, originally Thurgood Marshall, was an American lawyer, civil rights activist, and an appointed Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Marshall was the first ever African American man to be appointed to the Supreme Court, on which he served for 24 years. He was the court's 96th justice. As an attorney, he argued for many cases before the Supreme Court. His most notable case was the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education, in which the Supreme Court ended racial segregation in American public schools. Marshall also founded the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, an organization that focuses on the rights of African Americans. Thurgood Marshall was born July 2, 1908 in Baltimore, Maryland. He was the second child born to Norma Erica Williams, an elementary school teacher, and William Canfield Marshall, a waiter and country club steward. His family had a comfortable middle-life experience. Marshall's parents were believers in good education, thus encouraging him and his brother to think and learn. Whenever Marshall got in trouble at school, his history teacher made him memorize sections of the U.S. Constitution. This punishment would serve him well in his later legal career. Marshall first learned how to debate from his father, who used to take him and his brother to courthouses to observe cases. They would later debate about what they heard. While Marshall's father never told him to become a lawyer, Marshall has said that his father taught him how to think like a lawyer. At Frederick Douglass High School, Marshall excelled and was always placed with the brightest students. Along with doing well with his studies, he was also the star of his school's debate team. He finished high school a year early with a B grade average and was ranked third in his class. His efforts would lead him to Lincoln University, a public, historically black institution in Oxford, Pennsylvania.
He joined an exceptional student body that included Langston Hughes and Cap Calloway. Marshall did not at first take his studies seriously. He was suspended twice for hazing and pranking other students. However, after marrying Vivian Buster Bury, he started to take academics seriously. He graduated at Lincoln with honors with a Bachelor of Arts in the Humanities with a major of American Literature and Philosophy. Marshall wanted to attend the University of Maryland Law School, but his admission was denied because of race. His first-hand experience with discrimination in education made him feel like he has to do something about it. Therefore, he attended law school at Howard University in 1930, which was another historian black school. While Howard, he was influenced by Charles Houston and other legal scholars who developed and perfected methods for winning civil rights lawsuits. They helped him pass the Maryland bar exam, an exam that is given by the body that governs law and domestic practice before women is allowed to practice law in 1933. After passing the Maryland bar exam, Marshall began private practice in Baltimore. However, he failed to land any significant cases as he was inexperienced. In 1934, he applied to serve as counsel for the Baltimore branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which is known as NAACP. He became a counsel and started to represent the organization in the lawsuit of discrimination. His first legal victory was Murray v. Pearson in 1935, in which Marshall successfully sued the University of Maryland for denying an African American applicant admission to his law school simply on the basis of race. In 1936, Marshall moved to New York City to work for the NAACP full-time as a staff lawyer. After working 2 years as a staff lawyer, Marshall became the lead chair in the legal office of NAACP and was named the chief of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. His case, Murray v. Pearson, was the start of his career and the start to end racial segregation in public schools.
The most notable achievement of Marshall's career as a civil rights lawyer was when he won the 1954 Supreme Court case of Brown v. the Board of Education. A black family in Topeka, Kansas, filed a lawsuit when the local school district declined to place their daughter in the school closest to their home. Instead, she was forced to attend an all-black school further away. Multiple black families had similar problems, and also during the lawsuit, Marshall went against racial segregation, especially the separate but equal doctrine established in the Supreme Court case Plessy v. Ferguson. Marshall cited the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment, which requires that states must provide equal rights and protection to all of the citizens. Marshall argued that the facilities for African Americans were far more inferior than those for whites. The Supreme Court ruled that segregation of African Americans and whites went against the 14th Amendment and violated the Constitution. Segregation in public schools was outlawed. The case inspired and laid the foundation of the civil rights movement that was to take place over the next decade. Through this case, Marshall proved to the world that he was one of the most exceptional lawyers America has ever seen.
In 1961, newly elected President John F. Kennedy appointed Marshall as a judge for the United States Second Circuit Court of Appeals. He served as a judge over the next 4 years. During those 4 years, he wrote over 150 decisions, including support for the rights of immigrants, limiting government intrusion in cases involving illegal search and seizures, double jeopardy, and right to privacy issues. He did a favor for the people. None of his decisions were ever reversed by the Supreme Court. This outstanding work on creating decisions served him well. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson appointed Marshall to the office of United States Solicitor General, declaring that it was the right thing to do, the right time to do it, the right man in the right place. Marshall was sworn into the office. In the span of 2 years, he won 14 out of 19 cases in which he argued for the government. In 1967, President Johnson appointed him as the first African American to be an Associate Justice on the Supreme Court. During his time on the Supreme Court, he remained a strong believer in individual rights and never wavered in his devotion to ending discrimination. He consistently supported rulings upon the strong protection of individual rights and liberal interpretation of controversial social issues. He was part of the majority that ruled in favor of the right to abortion in Roe v. Wade case in 1973. Marshall shares the opinion that the death penalty was unconstitutional in all circumstances, in Furman v. Georgia case, which was a criminal case in which the United States Supreme Court struck down all death penalty system in the United States in a 5-4 decision. He remained in the Supreme Court for 24 years, but became an isolated liberal member of the increasingly conservative court. He was largely relegated to issuing strongly worded dissent as the court reinstated the death penalty and limited affirmative action measures and abortion rights. He retired from the Supreme Court in 1991 as Justice Clarence Thomas replaced him. After his retirement, Marshall received United States Senator John Haynes Award for the greatest public service by the elective and appointed official and Liberal Medal for protecting individual rights under the Constitution in 1992.
Marshall died due to heart failure on January 24, 1993. He was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. There are many memorials dedicated to the achievements and character of Marshall. An 8-foot statue of Marshall stands in Lawyer Mall adjacent to the Maryland State House. Texas Southern University renamed its law school after Marshall, and the University of California, San Diego renamed Third College Thurgood Marshall College in 1993. There's even a high school in San Francisco named after him. Marshall received the Presidential Medal of Freedom after his death in 1993. Thurgood Marshall is remembered as one of the greatest and most influential characters in the civil rights movement. Today, African Americans are able to receive proper education and pursue various careers because of Marshall's work in Brown versus the Board of Education. Marshall's legacy has inspired other black leaders to rise up and be the best at everything they do. President Barack Obama is a prime example of this. Marshall stands for the likes of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. as one of the most memorable people in the civil rights movement. He approached pursuing racial equality much differently than how Malcolm X and Martin Luther King did. After his death, a news article read, "We make movies about Malcolm X. We get a holiday to honor MLK. But every day, we have to live with the legacy of Justice Thurgood Marshall."